John, I learned about him and June working really hard to make the plans. It took a year to get everything together to go for a year down to Santiago. And during that year, he found out we were going to be in Santiago, and not before he came. And so he, this is what Rotary means. So not only do you find out about travel, but Rotarians then connect you with other people. And John connected Lance and I with Ricardo and Lillian. Ricardo picked us up. We didn't, the three of us, other than talking on the phone at John and June's home. The picture behind me is actually Lance and Ricardo at the Rotary Club of Santiago downtown. Lance was asked to speak while he was there. Lance speaks no English, no Spanish other than hello, thank you, and that kind of thing, and just put Ricardo on the spot and ask him to translate. And some people may have heard me say, I really don't remember what Lance said, but I remember the two of them having a really good time and laughing, and just, I hope, everybody else has had as good time as I did there, because they did a great job together, just that spur of the moment thing. But that is just John is going to carry the presentation. What I want to be maybe the foundation for this is one of the benefits of Rotary. It opens our eyes to the world. It opens our eyes to other people. And so John and June, thank you for what you have done for Lance and I. Ricardo and Lillian, thank you. And I think all of us will really benefit from hearing about your experience tonight, John. And with that, the floor is yours.
Well, I just hope this next part works well.
Or if it doesn't, we will work it out. It's no problem.
Voila.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Let me. I'm in difficulty seeing that. How do I get the top to get out of the way?
John, go down to the bottom where the little plus and minus is. Next to it, all the way over, go all the way to the right, and see where that little line where you can make it bigger or smaller. There's a little teeny tiny icon next to the minus sign. Bring your cursor down, and now over to the left, a little bit more over. No. A little bit more there. Click that.
Okay. Good. We're good to go. Well, this is going to move very quickly because I need to, because this is over 60 years of experience that have captured, and we could talk all night long about this, particularly with Ricardo and Lillian and June here. So we went to Chile for a year, August 2018 to July 2019. And you already know it starts with Ricardo and Lillian. Our first visit was in 1977, 78. It was delayed. Originally, we were going to go in 73, but there was a overthrow of the communist government at that time. A military dictatorship under Pinochet took place, so it was not a good time to go. My mom went 6 times. In fact, she helped Lillian and Ricardo. What Lillian with probably at least 2 of the girls, maybe all 3. I think we've seen a lot of major changes over the year. Ricardo became my brother with an international experience in 1962 and January 29th. And just the other day, we had our 61st anniversary. And I sent him a text and he sent a text back. We call each other bum, and there's a whole history behind that. But you see there what Ricardo texted back to me. And he said, you are right, bum, 61 years. The experiment is no longer an experiment, but a well-proven fact. Love is stronger than distance, cultures, and build everlasting experience. And although it's not Rotary, I know Rotary experiences that a lot with international programs. So 60, we're in our 62nd year. I have to start with family and our introduction to family and the culture. Our first night was a Saturday night. And that's where family and familia began, introduction to the tradition and culture. And that first night out on the patio, a very traditional thing of family gathering with what's called their picateo, which is sort of like antipasto or charcuterie in France. And Ricardo and his 6 siblings, their spouses, and many, many children were there that first night. So that was our introduction. We'd only been there 3 or 4 hours, and we're meeting all the family the very first night. Also, our cultural experience and immersion began with Christmas. Very different. We were at Ricardo's, where he grew up, amazing home that we called Macul. It was on a street called Macul. And only 2 times we were there did we have a meal in what's called the El Comedor Grande, the grand dining room. But it was at 1 to 3:30 or so in the morning with about 30 people. So that's their tradition, or it was at that time, is that everybody's gone to church, you come home and then have your Christmas meal, and the children do their gifts in the morning. Also that same trip was introduction to their background, the Palestinian heritage and culture. And this was amazing. It was an all-night party with 65 people, and everything was Arabic that night. Palestinian music, Arabic music, food, language. I don't think I heard much Spanish that night. So that was the introduction to Ricardo's heritage from the Mideast. That first trip, I have the names of the 4 young boys. They were young then. They're mostly in their 40s now. Miguel, Javier, Elias, Norque. We immediately became tios, tio and tia, aunt and uncle. And they call us that. Later on, we had the Ricardo and Lillian's girls that are, I mean, we love them to death. And this picture of them is at Corolla's graduation from New York University in the spring of 2016, where she completed her master's degree in public administration. So it's Corolla next to June, then Camila, she lives up north, and then Valentina, the youngest, she's currently in Paris, France, working and studying. We have additional family addition. Luis Bernal, our son, he came to the United States when he was 15 years old. And I thought about that today. I was 15 when Ricardo came to the United States. And he loves it if I say that he's my younger brother. So he is, for purposes of this presentation. Luis came on a program with us in upstate New York for 6 months called Youth for Understanding. The picture of the 3 of us was on New Year's Eve, 2020, when we were there. And then the one to the right was actually a Rotary visit. And Susan, you may remember that. That's when we went to Greenville Tech to the aircraft maintenance program. And Luis was with us in the country for about 4 months. And that he went to most Rotary meetings with me when he was here. This was our bucket list number 1 after 9 other visits of going to Chile. And what our goal was independent living with our own apartment and our own independence of getting around and doing our own shopping, moving around, cultural immersion, which was amazing, rich family time weekly. And that was a constant. Almost every Sunday, we all had a meal together unless we were traveling. And June and I were pleased to host many of those at our apartment. You'll see in a moment, we had extensive travel. I've had some people tell me that I probably know more about Chile than many Chilenos. And because I've seen a lot of the country, June, I've seen it a lot over the years. We wanted to make new international friends. The main way we did that was way through church, and then the urban lifestyle. And then the picture is from our patio, from our apartment on a beautiful sunset night with the Grand Toreo Tower, which is the tallest building in South America. It didn't take us long to get right into the culture. The picture of June is drinking a pisco sour, a typical drink there in a Peruvian restaurant nearby our apartment. About a week later, we were in a seafood restaurant that had been recommended by family. Of course, you can see the top of the wine bottle. Traditional, I don't think we had it there, but empanadas are a constant. And then one of my favorite sayings, una día sin vino es como una día sin sol. A day without wine is like a day without sunshine. Favorite places in Santiago, there are many that we absolutely love in the city, the churches, many parts of the city are just amazing. Two of the favorites, lots of markets, but the Central Market that I've gone with Ricardo many times over the years, just a huge place. And one of the things about Chile that's so amazing is the fruits and vegetables, the fish, the seafood, and of course meat. So I mean, this is an amazing place to go and shop. The other place, and I think Lance and Lene, you probably went there, Los Dominicos, the arts and crafts, Artesanía. June and I've probably been there 40 times over the years. It's right in Santiago, and all your crafts people with traditional crafts, and we buy stuff for ourselves, and we buy stuff for many guests and visitors. So let me talk about our challenges, and what you're seeing is our little dog Patches that went with us at the age of what, June, 13 and a half, I think, something like that, 14 years old. So here's the things, there was a lot to get ready. Our medical screening and shots, that was relatively easy, but we did have to go to somebody other than our own doctor. Patches vet screening, which was by a separate vet, that was easy. Patches ag department approval was very difficult. It's very laborious getting it, and they cut it real close, and I'll tell you how close. I had the documents from the ag department sent to FedEx in Atlanta, where we were departing from, and I got them the day we were leaving. And when we went through and went to Chile, they weren't even interested in my visa and papers. They wanted to see Patches papers. So it was a big deal. The next one is a route. That's a number you have to have for identification. And then the 1 year resident visa, those were very difficult. We had lots of places to go and stand in line or wait for an appointment. Ricardo was with us on many, but despite that, few of them we went on our own, and it was just not terribly efficient. The visa, we filed that in August, and we got our visa in April. Another thing I'd share with you, and I remember this, it was part of the culture. I was a little uptight the day I took my paperwork to the post office, and I was a little uptight, and the clerk at the post office is interacting with me, and Ricardo scolded me because in Chile there's a grace. And she was being very graceful to me. And he reminded me that I was in Chile. I hadn't been there very long. So I love that reminder. It reminded me where I was, because there's such a grace. I use the word simpatico. People are just wonderful there. Getting our apartment normally would have been difficult, but with Ricardo and Corolla, they led the way on that with the landlord and sort of opened that door for us. Normally, you would not get a checking account to pay bills while you were there, which we had, but it was hard, but Ricardo has multi-decade relationships, and so that opened that door. We leased our home for a year. We had an excellent manager that gave us peace of mind to look after our home. Anything that went wrong, they saw that it got taken care of, communicated with us, did the rent deposits, all of that. Prepping our home took many months, many details. We had to store a lot of stuff. We had to make our home livable for somebody else. So we had 2 different storages, one for furnishings and personal effects, another one for my car. We sold June's car before we went. And then how are you going to get mail? And June found a service called Traveling Mailbox, which worked great. Almost every day we would get an email with images of what our mail was. Did we want it opened? and then they would post it again, or did we want it sent to us, or did they want it sent to somebody else? So that worked great. The other thing I didn't mention is that we were very fortunate that there was, in the park across from us, there was a pet event, and I discovered what's called Pet Sitter. And that was very important for us to have pets care for Patches when we traveled. And that was Aviera, who took care of Patches 6 times when we traveled. And the service was amazing because we would get text and videos and pictures several times a day. So it gave us great comfort that our little girl was taken care of. Favorite seaside locales, there's many up and down this 2,600-mile coast. We haven't seen it all, but we've seen a lot of it. Realize it's 2,600 miles, but only 100 miles max width in the country. Viña del Mar's probably the most well-known iconic city and beach. I'll never forget the first time we went there in 1977. You see this garden with this clock, welcome to Viña, and that was my first impression when we went there. We have also been to Viña several New Year's Eve when we've been there, some with Ricardo and Lillian and the girls, and then when we were there last. And so it's Feliz Año Nuevo. There's about 1 million other people that come to Viña that week. And then to the right, the picture, Lance's background, is a port city and a very eclectic city, Valparaiso. And you've got the amazing Andes Mountains. To the left, you see a picture of Santiago and the big tower, but with the backdrop of the mountains, which are very nearby. They're snow-capped year-round. And so you may have a very warm summer day, might be 85 degrees, but typically, not always, but typically it'll cool down at night to about 55 degrees. So it's a wonderful climate most of the time, although it can be very hot. To the far right, I added this aerial photo so that you now have Santiago. You can see the city, and then you can see how close the city and the Andes Mountains abut each other. The middle one is a wonderful road that I love. I've driven it a couple of times with Ricardo's standard shift vehicle, and that's up over the mountains to a ski area called Portillo, but also on the way to Argentina. And one of the times I drove it was when Ricardo, Lillian, and June and I were going to Mendoza, which is a beautiful city in Argentina. So we have traveled south many times. In 1977, we went south to a place called Temuco in Pucón and Villarrica. This is the volcano in the middle at Villarrica, and the lake to the left, my left, maybe your right, is Los Saltos de Laja, which is a beautiful falls. And then to the far right was when June and I were there. We went to Puerto Varas. That was our first place in the south that we went to on about a 2-week trip. We absolutely loved it there for about 3 or 4 days. You're looking at the volcano Osorno. You're also looking at a church that we went to, and we wanted to see the church as we do many times. And so we went to Mass on Sunday, and that is the Sacred Heart of Jesus Church, Iglesia del Sagrado Corazón de Jesús. My number one place I wanted to go was to the island of Chiloé, and that's in the south. We were there, I think, about 5 days, stayed in Castro, Chile. And the draw there is the UNESCO churches. There are 16 churches that were built in the 1700s and 1800s, all wooden structures. It was different periods with the Jesuits and the Franciscans. We visited 9 of those while we were there, just amazing structures. The one to the right in Castro is an open church. We went in it several times. It was right across the plaza from where our hotel. The one to the left is been an iconic favorite of mine for a very, very long while. It's an actual picture of the night sky, but with the top of the church painted and colored. And it's actually the church that's Alta Childo, which we went to. And there are over 100 churches on this island, so it's a pretty amazing place to go to. One of the places we went to see a church is called Chanchi. And early that morning, when we got there, I wandered around and I found this friend that I made friends with, Pedro Patricio. And I chatted with him for probably 20 minutes, best I could. And he was filleting merluza, which is a wonderful fish. And then we returned for lunch the same day, same fish. A couple hours later, we had some wonderful Chilean wine with it. And for the two of us, it was $16 for the lunch. So it was great. One of our real highlights, and this was with Lillian and Ricardo, the middle daughter, Camila, and her significant other, and their two children, live up north in San Pedro de Atacama. And Elfie works at this amazing place called ALMA. ALMA stands for Atacama Large Millimeter Array. This is the place in the world where the universe is watched and discovered. It's at a very high elevation. It's very clear sky, very dry. There are 21 countries that participate at ALMA. Now, we weren't able to go to 5,000 meters. We were at 2,900 meters where all the facilities are, the watching, the transporters and service, what you have, training, because we had to have our blood pressure taken. And we were already had higher blood pressure, took it twice, and we weren't cleared to go to the top, but that was okay. But you see the picture to the side, that's at the 5,000 meters. That's about 16,000 feet. To the right was the highlight of our day. And that's a transporter that weighs 130 tons. The antennas weigh about 110 tons. And they have, at any given time, there's 66 up on top, and they're spread out from anywhere from about 50 meters to 16 kilometers or nearly 10 miles. So it's a very large area at the top. The transporters are made in Germany. There's two of them. They're called Lori and Otto, after the name of the owners. And there's 28 wheels on them. And this is a picture of June standing next to one of them. We also got to ride in it. And what was amazing, it can be operated from the inside or from the outside. When we rode in it, Elfie was managing it as we rode in the little area there, the parking lot, remotely. So we were in it with nobody else driving it other than Elfie remotely. This was an amazing, amazing place to go to. And it was also wonderful to be with Camila and Elfie and their son that was at that time. So just one of our highlights to the north. We also went south on our trip. We went to the Glacier San Rafael. We were aboard the ship called Scorpio Dos. It has about 103 passengers, a staff of 35. Wonderful food, 4 meals a day, free-flowing wine and pisco and drinks all day long. Just a great, with several different places that we went. Our favorite photo was on the front of the ship with the glacier in the background. And then one of the traditions is you drink whiskey when you're out on your tender. And one of the staff will carve ice off part of an iceberg floating around. And you're drinking 12-year-old whiskey with 30 million year old ice. So that was another great highlight of our time there. June's number one was to go to Easter Island, Rapa Nui. And we went, it's about 4.5 hour flight to out there, one of the most isolated places in the globe. We were fortunate. Camille had worked out there interning for quite a while. And this is one of the friends she made out there, Simone Leone, who was a modern day Rapa Nui. And he was our guide for 2 days. We learned more than most tourists would learn. We'd get to a site, 7 different parks we went to. And we'd get to a site, people would arrive after on a bus and they'd leave before us. It's just amazing what we learned from Simeon about Easter Island and the culture. And then you see the Moai. They are, I'm going to call them statues for lack of a better word, that honor ancestors that were leaders in the different tribes there. And so these are built to honor them and pay respect and to remember them. Their remains originally, as I understand it, were buried underneath, but over time, storms and tsunamis have removed some of those. That was an amazing place. We saw a lot of culture, music, food, again, the seafood, just amazing. The beach, Jim and I went back to the beach there. And then we joined a church. I knew about this church before we went. Our friend Hector with us in the church was the first to greet us. He became a 2-day-a-week lunch guest, but also our Spanish teacher. So he became a great friend. I text him every day now in Santiago. To the other side is June's Bible study that met every Monday morning. Many new friends for her, and they continue. June still participates in that Bible study online every Monday morning. And there can be probably people from 4 continents participating in that Bible study. I attended a Tuesday morning men's group. These became great friends. I was there every Tuesday morning with them for breakfast and Bible study. And for a while during the pandemic, I was online with them. A little bit about culture and scenes. The one to the left was a prior trip with Ricardo and Lillian to the south in a park that we went to. It was a lamb roast. I was the only gringo there, so I got to cut the first piece of lamb. And what we're seeing was the entertainment, the traditional dance called the cueca. To the other side is also the cueca, cross generations, and it's during their independence, Fiesta Patrias. Now, something I have to tell you about Chilenos and their holidays. It's not a single day. It's many days. And during this particular one, it's really about all week long. People travel. A lot of people leave Santiago to go to other parts of the country. The parks in the cities are full with food and beverage and dance and music and just enjoying their independence. Again, the fruits and vegetables. I went to one once, twice a week, about a half mile from where our apartment was. Got to know the people every time I went. Andre, the fellow there, he'd say, "Mr. ¿Cómo está hoy?" He'd say, "How are you today?" And he would begin to help me pick out what I wanted, tell me what was fresh, and including cheese and olives and what have you. That was the highlight of many days, as well as the shopping. I love to shop. Wine, always good in Chile. It's gone from good to great since the mid-90s. The ones in the middle were gifts from Luis's family for her anniversary. The one to the right was on Easter Island, Rapa Nui. It's my favorite because it says Anacaina. That's the brand of the wine, but it's also the beach. It's a tropical beach, beautiful sand, warm water. And June, that's where the Rapa Nui landed. And I think it was the year 1038. June and I went back swimming. And then the one to the left, Lillian, Lance and Linnea remember, we did a tour, the 3 of us, to this winery. Santa Carolina is one of the oldest wineries. Our neighborhood, wonderful, beautiful neighborhood that we've known over all the years, called Providencia. This was out looking off our patio. We were on the 6th floor of an apartment house. Always lots of activity out in the plaza, a lot of ferias and events. This was at Christmas time. You could quite often find me out on the patio at night with a little wine and enjoying the beautiful evenings in the Gran Toreo. I mentioned urban lifestyle. This was one of my Fitbit days, November 1st, when first we're there, a day over 11,000. They had many days over 10,000. I don't see those much anymore. Lots of music abounds in Chile, with concert halls, outdoor concerts with the beautiful summer weather, etc. But also in the streets, every place you go, The one to the left are Metro entrance with the pan flute and the guitar. The one to the other side with the students, probably from a university in the heart of the city in front of a bank. And then my favorite was in the metro station. I actually have videos of these, but I didn't want to take the time to add those for this purpose. And I stood quite a while talking to this gentleman. And that sort of gets us to the end. Lance and Lene were there in April. We met at the Marriott. We had dinner together that night. We were together a few more times. One trip I was in the South. I met these Rotarians in Coyhaique, where Lene and Lance have been. They took a picture at the heart of this, where you go into the city, of the Rotary sign. It's a really interesting conversation with these ladies. You notice there's no men. It's an all women's club. And I asked them why. They said, we do service. All the men want to do is drink and party. So, and then the Gran Toreo, iconic. And then a picture I took of when we were in Puerto Varas of the volcano or Sarno. And then some scripture, praise to the Lord forever. Amen and amen. So that's a quick story of our time in Chile.
John, that was excellent. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of questions and comments. So please, anybody who has a question or comment for John, unmute yourself and go. Julia, you've got your hand up.
So John, I just had two questions, but I'll comment on the dog thing first, because as a vet, when people say they want to take their dog on a trip, on just a trip somewhere, and I'm like, have you looked into how much you have to do in the paperwork just for that trip? Because it's months of planning and let alone moving, and places like Hawaii and anywhere that doesn't have rabies is also a really hard area. But yeah, it's amazing the things people don't think about. So my question for you was when you look at how many months out you had to plan with your visas and stuff, this wasn't something that you were like, oh, hey, let's go to Chile. Like you would say like 6 months out, or when did you start your planning for the trip?
I would say, what would you say, June? 8, 9 months at least.
Yeah, probably, yes. Because there are a lot of things to get into place, because when you go, they're not going to rent to. If we hadn't had Ricardo and Corolla, we probably would not have found a place to rent, because they don't like to rent to foreigners.
They don't know us.
Right. And then did your phone service, so you said you were using your phone and texting, did you keep a phone service based out of the US, or did you get a phone based out of there?
We took our phones, but we also had local service.
That you added to your phone. So you had one.
we that's the other thing we did. We got local service immediately. So we had that.
Essentially what they do is they change your SIM card.
Yeah.
Okay, so you paid for phone service there locally.
Yeah.
Correct.
And not, so you didn't maintain a plan. You took your phone from here, but you didn't maintain a plan, an international plan here.
We had T-Mobile, and there's an element at that time, there was an element of service you can get with them, but we still had, I had a second phone that I bought.
Okay.
Here. And so I took that with me. So I actually had 2 phones while I was there.
Because I think that's one of the scariest, is just knowing that you're going to have a way to communicate with each other and with your friends there.
I didn't think about you, Julia, being a vet, you understanding the challenges, and that was probably our biggest challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, that made us very nervous.
Oh yeah, and the very last minute things. I mean, I'm shipping a dog to New York on Friday, and I can't print the paperwork until Thursday. So the person who's traveling with it can't get it until right before they go. And so it is one of those like very last minute things of, is the paperwork going to get where it needs to go in time?
Well, and that's why I didn't trust anything to get us on time. And I think it went to Atlanta, and I tracked them down. I said, do not send that information to my house.
Right.
to work out. So I gave him a FedEx address
Yeah.
across town. And it was right near our hotel that we were there the night before we left. And I went to FedEx to pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was cutting it real close.
Yes. Glad it worked out.
Yep.
So were
And
we.
our dog was amazing. She was 13 hours nonstop, not a peep out of her. And the same thing coming back.
And
Yeah,
she
she
was
was-
13 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot for a little old dog. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I would add is that I think it was in 2014 when we were in Chile. June's mom took a very bad fall in her apartment. She lived to tell about it, but she should have already been in some kind of assisted living. And June would not leave the country any longer while her mother was still living. So in 2016, I went to Chile by myself and spent time with Ricardo and Lillian and the family. When June's mom died, it wasn't too long thereafter. She died, what, June, in December?
No, April.
April. But it wasn't very long after that, June says, are we going to Chile? And the answer was, you bet we are. So we waited, so June didn't have to leave the country with her mother still living. But that had been on our radar a long while for us to go. And I don't think, Ricardo, I don't think you ever expected we would do it, did you? You're muted.
You're muted.
Okay. Anybody else?
Candace, you had your hand up.
Well, I did. I'm curious about the logistics around the apartment. Clearly, your wonderful friends to help you. Oh, here's Ricardo. Okay. Should we let him go first?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can. Ricardo, I don't think you
Okay.
expected we would come for a year, did you?
No, yes, I was not. Well, the truth is that I have to say that I got new hearing aids, and I'm trying to get used to it. And trying to adjust that properly, but then, well, yeah, what was the question, John? I didn't.
No, I said, I was commenting about, I don't think you ever expected we'd really come for a year, did you?
Yeah. And I think it was pretty strange, I remember telling John, well, why do you come to my house? Why do you have to rent an apartment, And he said, no, I want to live like a Chilean. So live like any other Chilean do. So he did that, and I think for me, it was a wonderful experience to have both of them here in Chile next to me. And I guess that for them, it was also very exciting experience too.
Okay. Candace, back to you.
Oh, so the apartment again. So with the reticence to rent to foreigners, obviously you had some wonderful friends help you with that. But in terms of the neighbors in the building, were they welcoming, even though?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
very much so.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
You had-
I won't say we got to know anybody really, really well, but they knew
Except
who
for
we
Connie.
were after a little while. We'd come and go. There was 24-hour front desk with a locked door, security. And so we'd see people, other people with dogs. Now, very, very friendly. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I mean, it couldn't have been any more perfect. And Corolla has an apartment in that neighborhood that was hers before she and Sebastian got together and lived in another apartment, and now with children, her husband. Beautiful neighborhood, walkability just amazing. I mean, that tower you see is less than a mile away, and there's a 6-story mall, all kinds of restaurants, lots of little neighborhood restaurants. Many of became our favorite. Food in Chile is incredible,
Mhm.
particularly if it's seafood or Peruvian. Chilean food too. Ramel, I'm not sure about Colombian food in Chile.
Well, John, this has been a fabulous presentation, and I suspect we could probably go on for another hour. I think many of us on this call are, diehard travel buffs. And even if we aren't traveling, we enjoy hearing and learning about areas. And then when you overlay that with friends like Ricardo and Lillian, and you overlay it with a Rotary touch that, through Rotary, you've touched so many people through your travels, and even now tonight again. I just really appreciate a lot of heart and soul that you put into it. June, thank you so much for joining us, and Ricardo and Lillian, who were certainly, very instrumental and a part of all this. And to all of our guests, thank you.